So super pumped to talk to you. I know you've been working Venley for you're coming up on 5 years, right?
That's right. 5 years.
And
why?
Dude, and I know you're doing a lot with it. I know the main thing, right, is helping sales reps get from start to earn, right, 250K to 500K. We can talk more about that without the burnout, right? Without the overworking and everything. So I kind of want to start there if you're cool with that. And just hear from you, like, tell me a little bit more about Venley and what you're building and why you're building it.
Yeah, very cool. Well, first off, congrats to you. Congrats on building this podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool that, obviously we met in Cabo a few months back. It's almost been a year, 6 months or whatever. Yeah. And now we're talking live, which is very, very cool. So I'll say, even with what I do at Venley now, it's very simple. So I work directly with salespeople and sales teams, helping their teams absolutely crush it, max out their comp, make as much money as possible, but do it in a way that feels authentic and congruent with themselves without burning out. And a big part of why I even started the business to begin with is because when I first got into sales, I was not a born salesperson. I was not particularly gifted at sales, and I almost got fired early on. I really wasn't that good. And eventually I kind of figured out how to be successful in sales. And that was cool and had success with that too. But one of the biggest things I realized is when you just work hard at your job, I grew up working really hard. I thought that's all you need for sales. When you work hard at your job by itself, you make a living. But when you learn how to work hard on yourself, you truly make a fortune, right? That's a modified Jim Rohn quote. And that's something that I really internalized early on. And it's really evolved on how I operate in life, from sales to life, to manage all the buckets. I call them buckets, right? The emotional, physical, mental, spiritual buckets, to manage all the buckets. So you can just show up, be congruent as a human being, and be the best version of you. And I saw that in my own career. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but because I was obsessed about personal development and growth, I started to do all these things that just helped me become a better version of myself. And as a side effect, I made more money. I had better results. I was happier. I had better relationships. Everything just got better over time. And as I got into leadership roles, I started realizing that not a lot of people thought this way, especially in sales.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. Everyone's just used to grinding and working hard and really hustling. And yes, you do have to work hard to a certain extent, but most people work hard at the wrong things. So when I started leading teams, I started to guide and teach them not just sales practices and strategies, but how to actually show up better as a human across the board. How do you have better habits? How do you have better self-discipline and control? And they started getting better results. So as those teams got better and better over time, I didn't really think much about this is how it's supposed to be. And it was probably almost a decade into my B2B career. And at this time, I was 30 years old, and I was running a sales org of 85 employees. And everyone's like, how did you do this? How did you have success in corporate? How are you helping all these people? And I'm like, oh, I just worked hard. I didn't really think much about it. And at that point, people were like, hey, listen, you should write a book. You should do whatever. This is before I wrote a book. But at the time, they were like, you should just write a book. So I wrote an ebook at the time, teaching people how to get promoted. And what was really interesting was I started to sell this and started building these other side hustles. I started to realize from the feedback I got from the audience, from people that are buying these things, was that they never thought about it this way. Again, they were just grinding and working really hard. So it eventually got to the point where I eventually, made that transition from a side hustle to a main hustle, where I made it my mission to help salespeople to achieve the success I was able to achieve, but also be able to do it in a way that feels good to them. So that's where now my business has been running for almost 5 years now. And I feel incredibly blessed that I've been able to do that, but also on top of that, create a business where I don't want to call it a lifestyle business, but I have far more control of my schedule than I've ever had before, because the way I've designed it is intentionally because of how I want to show up for myself. And I'm hoping it's also a reflection of how I do my life. So when I work with salespeople and teams, I can help them create the same thing in their own lives, in their own versions.
Yeah. And I mean, so many things we'll kind of dive into a little bit. What was there change for you? Was there a moment when you had the realization? Because just hearing you talk about it, something I see all the time, people are so focused on external things or their script, right? Or their manager, their territory, or everything else, and are almost afraid to turn inward and really invest in themselves, whether it's time, energy, or money.
Yeah.
And so for you to kind of go down that path early, what was it? Was it just kind of a natural feeling you had to explore that, just had an interest in that? Or did you maybe have a mentor? Like, what was it that sent you down that road?
You know, I think sometimes in the moment when something happens, we never realize the impact it has in that moment. And in the moment, things may suck or be terrible, but later has a better or greater effect. So for me early on, it was starting my B2B sales career, completely struggling and just being the worst. Not really, I was never used to being the worst, right? I've always done decent other past jobs, and they were mostly just internships, etc. I always like did well though, because I could work really hard. I could have a good work ethic. So come into a role and really struggle and get pressure from the top, and get pressure to get fired, etc. That was like a wake up call for me. And I remember as part of that journey, trying to figure out how to become better at sales. This was 2007, by the way. There wasn't like sales influencers. YouTube was not the same level. LinkedIn was not the same level. So the resources available for people in my role were very limited outside of books. So I remember going to the library, getting dozens of books literally every week and reading voraciously, tons of sales books. And they kind of helped to some extent, but they're all really old school. I mean, written like decades ago, very transactional, not really made for modern selling. It was at the time. And what was really interesting was there was one book I think got misplaced in the sales section. And it was a Tony Robbins book, Awaken the Giant Within. And, you know, I was like, oh, and in the past, I'd always been like, personal development, Tony Robbins, that really weird, goofy, tall guy. Like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
But I remember picking it up, reading just like the intro is called, right? Like the not the epilogue, the prelogue, whatever the intro is. And he talks about his story. And it hooked me in. And I'm like, let me just take us back and read this. And I remember going through and reading that book. And there was just a lot of just like little mini ahas. But I realized, you know, I had a mindset issue. And people overdo the mindset thing, but I had a mindset issue. And I didn't really realize that until I was reading the book. And I remember one of the moments that really stuck with me was a phrasing he said, which he said, if you don't like the answer, ask a better question. If you don't like the answer, ask a better question. And I realized at that moment, every time something happened to me that was undesirable, I would start to ask myself bad questions. So for instance, if I had a rough cold call, they hang up on me, I hang the phone up like, oh, why is the person such a jerk? Why they hang up on me? Why are they so mean? Why are they having such a bad day? Why is my job so hard? And just like an ant or automatic negative thought, once one of those came in, it would come with a series of other ones. Suddenly it's like, why is the economy bad? Why is your boss such a jerk? Why doesn't he train you? Why do people have better territory? Why do people get inbound leads? You don't get any inbound leads. You're like, why is this so hard? Like, why aren't you more skilled? And it would just kind of beat myself down. And the learning from that was the moment of realizing, how can I ask myself a better question? So for instance, same situation, bad cold call. Now it's like, what can I learn from this? What can I do differently? What can I control? How can I show up better? What can I do now to minimize it happening in the future? So questions like that started to prompt me to think more positively. And that was the beginning of the journey, by the way. So that was the first piece where I didn't make the connection at the time. But I'm like, okay.
Interesting.
I'm on to something here. No joke, Tim. Like, I literally had like these prompt questions. What can I learn from this? And this kind of prompt questions taped to the inside of my visor, to my desk, and basically places to trigger myself every time I started getting into that negative spiral to bring myself back in. And that was like the very intro into like learning how I can become a better version of me. Because now when you start to learn to think that way, it's like, that actually was helpful. What else can I do to get better? How else can I start shifting my results? How else can I improve my discovery? Who would know the better answer? If I didn't know, who would I think would know? Who else can I learn from? You start thinking in different mental models. And that was like the very beginning. Sometimes people see me today, like, you know, of what I've achieved or who I've become. They're like, oh, this is how you were born. No way.
Yeah.
Like, it started
amazing.
there. And over time, it started kind of stack little things. And I'm like, ooh, I would hear a great idea from a friend, like, oh, they time block in the morning and just do deep work. Maybe I should try that. You know? So you go on this journey at that point of becoming like a human A/B test.
Yes.
I'll learn how to A/B test everything to see what works best for you. You don't try to steal everyone else's thing, but you just do what's potentially best for you. You just try it and see what happens from there.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. It's like, you really got to put on your scientist hat almost. How curious can you be? Where can you keep like more of an open mind? And I just love that share with questions, because I had heard this a couple years back, similar, but just framed in a different way. And it was like, look, when your mind is posed with a question, it's naturally going to try and come up with an answer. Right. That's just what it does. Right. And so if there's something you want an answer to, right, or something that you're struggling with or trying to figure out, be very intentional with the question you ask it, because your mind is going to start looking for answers. Right. It's just kind of like this autopilot response. And it's such a easy way to start shifting how you're viewing what's going on around you.
Yeah. And what I found has really helped him is you have to curate the design to trigger yourself to ask the questions. Mm-hmm. So like the very early phase of me doing that was literally Post-it notes, right?
Yeah,
like
I love that.
So I could visually see it. And that might be the start for whoever's watching this right now to do the same thing. But now I've gotten to the point where I've actually engineered into my process of what I do each day to trigger myself in certain ways. For example, like even at the end of each day when I journal, I use this like digital journal that has key prompts that show up. So it's like, what are your wins for the day, Marcus? Okay. Like, so it's like, it's training me to kind of,
yes,
like, what insight did you learn today? What could you done better? How did you feel about today? What's your number one focus for tomorrow? Stuff like that. So you start to engineer into your routine to help you kind of guide your focus every single day, every single week, every single quarter, every single year.
Yeah. Dude, I love this because, this is something I see when I work with guys who are high performers, whether they're in sales or running a business, they're doing something, and there's a part of their life they struggle with, right? Whether it is binge eating, too much alcohol, procrastination, not hitting the gym, not doing whatever. This is so common. And it's like we feel that if we can't do it with willpower, we're not good enough to do it. And one of the things I try and hammer on, which is exactly what you said, is pay attention to your environment, your social environment, your physical environment, everything that is going on around you, and use it to your advantage. Right. Put cues, put things around, sticky note on your computer, right? I love the visor. That's amazing, right? Somewhere where you're going to be, where it just, it acts as a trigger and it acts as a reminder. That's something where, hey, nighttime or evenings here, and I have this prompt, it's time to journal, and all the questions, all the prompts are there. And it takes the mental load out of it. And all you have to do is show up and execute.
That's it. Just make it as easy as possible, right? When you try to develop that new habit, it's like, how can I make it easy? How can I make it obvious, right? What's my cue to get me to do it?
Yeah.
So whatever we can do to make it easy, especially for a new habit, that's so key.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What do you feel when you start working with people? Okay. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you are seeing these aspiring, driven, often high performing, but also maybe aspiring to be high performers, salespeople? Like, what are the biggest mistakes that they're making? Probably they're overlooking, it's not even in their, in their atmosphere right now.
Well, to make it almost overly simplistic is most of them lack the proper habits. The proper habits across the board for really everything in their life. I'll give you a really, really simple example. So like, typically when I'm coaching salespeople, I kind of phase in like 3 kind of core components of skills, kind of teach them, right? And the first phase is actually mindset and habits, because most of the time they don't have the right mindset and habits, which is really the foundation of everything else. So like, I can't really teach them how to prospect effectively if they have bad habits. So even if they know the best script in the world, the best whatever, if they can't show up every day to do it, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's prospecting, and then there's extra sales skills. So I'd say number 1, it is going to be developing the right habits consistently that actually serve them with intentional design. And for each person is always different things, right? Like, for example, sometimes I find if I take a look at even Salesforce's most recent sales report, the typical salesperson only spends 30% of their week selling. If you think about it, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Your livelihood based off selling, only 30% on average is actually done selling. The rest of the time is being wasted on useless meetings, admin, social media, getting distracted, et cetera, at 70%. So even if we can get that cut in half, that 70% in half, you're going to be far better as a result. So I'll give you a really simple example. I was, one restaurant program, he sent me a message today. He's struggling because each day he's not sure where his focus needs to be. And one of the principles that I teach is plan tomorrow today. Let's plan tomorrow today. That principle is as simple as developing the habit, which you have a trigger. So it's like building your calendar, let's say end of the day, 4:30 to 5 o'clock, whatever time they're going to wrap their day up. All you do is you take a look at your next day. Where's a white space in your calendar? You look at your biggest blocks or your biggest levers, ideally based off a tool I teach them how to use called a 12-week year, which you plan on your biggest rocks. You take a look at the biggest high priority rocks, and now you put that into your calendar the next day instead. So instead of just now looking at Slack, instead of looking at your email, looking at your CRM, trying to pick random, like, I think I should probably do this. And instead, you look at the highest leverage things that will give you pay that greatest dividend, and you put it into your calendar first. You block it completely out. So you want to remove any decision making. So you're just planning tomorrow, today. By the act of simply eating that habit, now when he wakes up, he doesn't need to think. He's like, cool, on my calendar, it falls on my calendar, and I simply execute it and make it happen. So I would say developing the right habit. That's just one example, one habit, but there's many other habits that you have to develop as well. Yeah. Even just that simple act of planning ahead saves you so much time, because now the next day you're not wasting time trying to decide, grabbing your phone, getting sucked into Slack or something that's going to basically waste your time.
And the stress out of it, right? There is that saves time because you're not spending time planning in the morning or just guessing, but also there is a level of, hey, dude, let me take a deep breath. I got tomorrow planned. I know I don't have to stress about it the rest of the day. It's locked in. I know my priorities. I know my big rock. It's actually already on my calendar. Now I'm ready to roll. And I think that's a variable that a lot of people doing this don't grasp, because it's not quite tangible, but is almost the weight that is lifted when you start giving yourself a little bit of a plan.
100%. And this is why there's nothing wrong with this, but what I used to do was this. So I remember getting Sunday-itis. And Sunday-itis, if you don't know what that is, it's like Sunday night, you're hanging out with family, you're chilling, but you're thinking about the next day, Monday, and you're like, what am I going to do? You start thinking about your numbers, your quota, your pipeline, any meetings, have any white space. But then you're like, you know what I'm going to do Monday morning? I'm going to plan my day. I'm going to plan my day and just kind of get kickstarted. Yeah. Now, I used to do that, and I would still feel stressed, even just knowing I was going to plan it Monday. What I started doing was that plan tomorrow, today, I did that Friday for plan for Monday. So Friday night, one of the last things I do is just plan my Monday, fill it all out, fill the whole week if I need to, pre-plan my biggest rocks for the following week. So now I have a good plan. So now when Monday starts, I want to have a good kickoff to the race. I don't want to try to start my race kind of warming up. I'm ready to go Monday because I already know my biggest plan is for the week, and Monday's going to go off really strong. So I actually used to call Monday Money Mondays, because I would tee it up with have just a bunch of money appointments and like great things I was going to do, so I could start really strong, because I knew on top of that, if I could have some wins under my belt Monday morning, that momentum would carry me through the rest of the week.
Man, I love this because, going back to what I was saying with often how people feel like they have to have the willpower, and if they don't, they're somehow less than. And I remember our conversation when we were in Cabo and about social media, and you had the app, OneSec app, not a sponsor, shout out.
Maybe they should sponsor you.
On your phone, right? Because you just had it as a way to delay. Basically how OneSec works is you click on Instagram and something pops up. Maybe it makes you wait 10 seconds and it tells you to take a deep breath. And then you select why you're going into the app. So it's enough friction, right? And I loved it because, I was there and I'm with a lot of people who have successful businesses, but, they're also dealing with challenges and struggles too. And one of the things came up with procrastination or getting distracted. And to see you chatting with you, guy who has a successful coaching business, and you were just like, yeah, I know that if I don't have this, I'll get distracted with social media. And so I put this in place so I don't. And it was something just clicked. I'm like, man, just somebody who gets it and says, look, I would rather have my desired outcome than feel like I'm doing something with just willpower to like feed my ego. And it was like, I am so clear on what I want the end result to be. And instead of looking at, man, I can't do it. I just get sucked into social media and then I'm there for hours, instead being like, okay, what do I need to do? What system needs to be in place? What's a tool I could leverage, right? Asking the right question. And so I see the same with the planning out the week.
Yeah. So I think about it this way. It's like the habits I want to create, how can I make them easier, more attractive to do? And the ones my bad habits, how can I eliminate them? How can I make it harder? How can I create more friction from even like social media? I mean, I think about social media as a good example. So these companies spend billions of dollars trying to create an app that hooks you and makes you addicted. Yeah. So to hope that our willpower can beat that, that's pretty hard. Like, just make it harder for yourself to get to that point. And I think about this is for like everything. For food. Like, for example, I love food. I love candy. I love snacks. I love a salty snack. If it's in the house, I'll eat it all. And I realized this years ago because I had a problem controlling myself. So what did I do? I created more friction. I just don't have it in the house. Yeah, that's it. Like, first it was like, oh, I'm just gonna put it in a high like cabinet. No, man, I'm gonna climb chairs now and like climb a ladder to get to that. Yeah. Best thing to do, move it out of the house. Now I have to leave the house. And because I'm cheap, I'm not going to pay for Instacart Postmates to go and pay delivery fee to get snacks. So I'm like, make it hard for yourself. Yeah. That's when you're more likely to like uphold that discipline, if you will, to not engage that bad habit.
Yeah, I love that. On the topic of habits and the impact that it has, what has been like one of your favorite client success stories, wins, when it comes to simple changes, them just keeping an open mind, executing, and seeing results?
So I would say, what's interesting is like when I think about like sales, it requires developing a lot of key habits, like a lot of discipline, just like doing things that are just basically hard. You learn a new strategy, being disciplined to do it consistently, right? But we have this guy in this program. His name is Mike. He's actually been in the program for a couple of different years now. And what's really cool about him is he's actually an older sales guy. So he's been in sales since, I don't know, 20, 30 years. So he's in his 50s. Yeah. He's in his 50s. And, and it's interesting because, it's not to say we don't have people that are in their 50s in our sales program, but most of them are like that 25 to 45 range where they're investing in their career. And Mike is older than that. And kind of been just doing his thing for a long time. You grew up in the world of like, you grind really hard, you work a ton of hours, different generation, right? So there's a lot of value in like hard work, and being able to shift his mind space of not focusing on efficiency, but focusing on effectiveness, right? Being far more effective versus just trying to do more things. It was interesting to kind of see his transformation. So like, I think the first piece was like, because he's even more effective in the sales process. I remember when he sent me a message about 30 days in, he closed a $400K deal in a one call close. And he had never done that before, ever. It's always been multi call close. And he did it on literally first meeting. Yeah. And it blew his mind because he's learned how to be more effective. And that was kind of the first, like, whoa, that was the first piece. Wow. And then as he starts to improve how he's showing up every single day, he actually started to not only get better results, but do it in less hours. And it was really, really cool. It was like, by the time he ended up finishing his year, he ended up finishing Hidden Presence Club. So one of the top reps is coming over 100 plus reps. And he went from making about 125K, decent money, to 18K just in year one. Wow. And at this point, he had never really broken like that 150-ish mark. He's gotten like kind of teetered around to go way beyond that. And, his comp plan has limits to, but he's basically maxed his comp plan out. And that was interesting. But the best part wasn't just that. Because before, he would work 70, 80 hours a week just to make his 125K. And he reduced it down to about 50 hours. And we were almost laughing because he's like, like, once I got to 40, I could stop working, but I'm too used to like still working. I'm like, it's kind of funny, but still, so he reduced the time down by 20 hours a week, right? But more importantly, he had more time to do more stuff. So he had more time to volunteer at his church, take on leadership roles with his church, spend more time with his wife, go on trips. They ended up moving to San Diego, one of his dream cities, because he lived over on the East Coast, right? He had a remote role. But his life completely transformed. because he starts to actually improve on these habits from showing up to his sales process to everything that he was able to feel the benefits from, but not just for himself, but for his community, for his spouse, for his church. And I thought that was really, really powerful because he committed to it. He was open-minded to it, and he was coachable to it. That's what happened.
Yeah. It's such a great example of, I always tell guys, I'm like, you're everywhere you go. Yeah. In relationships, when you're in line at the DMV, when you're coaching your kid's basketball team, when you're at work. And so this kind of work, when you practice, you're building the muscle, you're building discipline, you're building focus, you're building the ability to prioritize what's most important. Right. And when you start doing that in one area of your life, how could it not trickle down and translate to other areas of your life? I love what you said about efficiency and effectiveness too. I just heard this morning, and it was like, most people now are trying to optimize for efficiency, and it leaves a huge gap for the people who are really focused on being effective and are willing to put in the work and provide a high quality output as well.
It's like that saying, I think it's a Bruce Lee quote where he's like, I fear not the man who knows 10,000 kicks.
Yeah.
I fear the man who knows one kick done like 10,000 times.
Yeah. Man. So this is all I want to ask about too, is because you were in sales roles and you shifted to running your own business. There's a lot of skills and skill sets that translate, right? Which is actually probably for a whole different conversation. That was something I had a ton of doubt on leaving sales, trying to start my own business. But first thing I want to ask is, what do you feel like people misunderstand most about being a founder, sales coach, like doing what you're doing now? What do you feel like is most understood about it? Misunderstood, sorry.
I would say it's way harder than everybody thinks. Like, that's probably the first piece. I think especially where you see a lot of salespeople who naturally as a byproduct of them being that role, they're almost like in the sales role, they're almost like a little entrepreneur. They're finding business, closing business, like, hey, cool, like that sounds awesome. And when you make that leap, that's probably a very useful skill, 100%. Communication, discipline, sales, etc. That's all really important. Yeah. But once you jump into the role of a founder or starting your own company, you start realizing pretty quickly that there are a lot of gaps that you have to kind of figure out pretty quickly to be successful, and that you may have not even realized until you're actually in the role. So, for example, depending if you had a side hustle first or not, but you need to learn how to create a compelling offer. Do you know how to create an actual offer that people actually want? Who do you want to actually go market and go to, right? Even something simple as that, to how will I go and market? How will I generate attention? You start realizing pretty quickly, like maybe you're good at sales, but that marketing lens of very top of the funnel is a different way to kind of think, and then to even managing a P&L, a profit and loss statement, to knowing how to if I'm bringing dollars in now, or if I'm not bringing dollars in, what's my monthly burn? Like, can I manage my finances? How can I structure it properly? To even managing your taxes, to managing your books, to thinking even long-term of promotional strategy, to improving your product, to customer success, fulfillment. So there's all these different hats you don't really realize are important until you're actually in the role. And as you start to build your business, scale it up, it's like, actually, I'm doing so much now. What's my next move? So you're often lost of what's the next step I should actually take that you're not even sure about. Because every bet that you make could be amazing for your business, or it could also cripple your business if you're not careful. You'll hire one bad person, they could drain your cash flow. So there's all these things you start thinking about, from system building to hiring people, etc. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And that's why it's really not uncommon. I've seen people, they break free from corporate, right? They leave the rat race, quote unquote. And they go and they start their own business, and maybe they make it a year. And then they go back, right? And again, nothing against them. It's really hard. I think they underestimate potentially how hard it actually is to do all these things, because online things get really easily glamorized. Oh, hey, just build a course and just market it on
just make an e-course, 6 figures. Just make an e-course.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
It's scalable, right?
Yeah.
So I think you get sold a dream a little bit, but But it's not all bad though, because once you figure it out, you sort of kind of learn from it. I mean, it's incredibly rewarding to be able to build your own products and to directly impact people and see the direct impact. It's really, really powerful. But I would say for most people that they don't realize is 99% of the time it's super hard.
Yeah.
And that 1% though is makes it all worth it. But most of the time it's just making hard decisions nonstop.
Yeah. Right. I think of, I was working with this coach for a bit and he summarized it into attract, convert, deliver, which is a nice way to think about it. And I think a lot of people, especially in sales, and they go into it, they're probably pretty good at converting. You put me on a call with somebody, I can talk to them. Even though when I did it and I started coaching, I went 0 for my first 20, right? So it was still pretty fucking hard to figure that out.
Selling your own products is kind of hard, actually. I think it's harder versus selling someone else's product, especially like when you're starting it out. And
if you're getting base, if you're still getting paid either way, there's really not a lot of pressure.
You don't have that profit breath,
Yeah, that commission stank.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. So over the last 5 years, I mean, it's a big transition, right? To go from having a steady paycheck, even if it's a commission based or heavily commission focused job, making this transition, making it work, all the growing pains, figuring out your offer. You have a family, right? Like this isn't just you and your studio apartment making it work without obligations.
Yeah.
What weight has that had at times on you? I'm curious about what the struggle really has been like for you personally and just trying to get to this point, making it work.
So what's interesting is, and I might be in a little bit of a unique situation, right? So I feel really blessed. I was in my corporate career for 13 years in that B2B sales role to the point of leading big teams. I made a lot of money. I was pretty successful, got a lot of equity. And I put myself in a financial situation where literally for a couple of decades, I didn't need to work, if I didn't want to work, I wouldn't have to work. $0 and be totally fine with the monthly burn that we're currently doing, plus inflation, plus everything else. So really fortunate to have positioned myself to have removed some of that financial stress. That was the first piece.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with because I grew very frugal and I'm pretty smart with my money. So even though I'm making no money, I was really smart with my money and have been really intentional across the board. So those are good habits all across the board. So when I started my business, I wanted to remove that. So when I dove into it, that pressure I didn't have to really worry about. I basically gave myself like a 1 year time frame. I'm like, I'm going to give myself 1 year to figure this out. If I can do it, great. The absolute worst case scenario, I basically go back. All right. Now, what's interesting was the struggle I ran into was really ego based, to be quite frank. So I went from having, at that point, 110 person org, having assistants, people doing stuff for me, being very well known in a Fortune 500 company, where even to this day, I'm still in the training videos. Everybody knew me. I'm at every President's Club. All the execs know me. They're flying me around in corporate jets. I'm wearing fancy clothes. I'm wearing nice watches. It looks like I made it, right?
Yeah.
You feel important. You feel powerful. You have influence. And, I did at that time. So suddenly, overnight, it's gone. I say no to all of that. I walk away. And here I am, just a lonely dude in his home office. And it's a very weird feeling.
Yeah.
It's just like, it was just like very strange. And the first couple of weeks, I didn't really think much about it. Right. I just was like, I'm gonna grind. I'm gonna build my business up. I'm gonna make it work. This is gonna be absolutely awesome. This is my dream. And, I went super hard into it. But I remember 2 weeks went by, and I remember, my wife was like, "Hey," so she hadn't really asked, how's it going? Because it's new. She's a little bit worried, how, she doesn't know how I'm going to feel. It's like, "Hey, how's everything going?" I'm like, "Amazing. It's great. It's fantastic." I just tell her every positive, positive word I can say. And she's like, "Great. What have you been up to?" And I'm like, "Huh. Actually, I have no idea." And I realized the last 2 weeks, even though I was working like 80 plus hours a week, I had no idea what I'd been doing. And I realized, I'm like, crap, what did I do before? So I knew what I was doing. I'm like, I guess I don't have a calendar anymore. I don't have a plan. I don't have a structure. I didn't have all those things that kind of naturally create process for myself in corporate. It's all gone. So I started kind of building that for myself. And this, again, at this point, didn't quite hit me quite yet. But I'm starting to kind of build things from scratch and build it up. I'm posting on LinkedIn for the first time consistently, right? I'm starting to build up a small, not small, but nominal audience, but but I still felt the pressure of like being successful. And the pressure wasn't necessarily, from anybody but me.
Yeah.
It was more so like, here I was. What did I do? What did I walk away from?
Yeah.
I used to I used to be someone, I thought, sounds egotistical, but I was somebody.
Yeah, I feel you.
And I was like, but now I'm nobody. Nobody knows me on LinkedIn. Nobody knows what I'm doing. They don't care about my background. They don't care about my results. I'm just another random dude writing posts on LinkedIn right now. Yeah. So that was like kind of hard, right? I was just like trying to figure out how it was. But on top of that, I felt like, not that no one said anything to me, but I felt like everybody was watching me from my prior company. Like, I would go like, people that viewed your profile, I see all these past people like checking out my profile, see what I was up to. I'm like, oh my God, they are watching me and judging me, right? Waiting for me to fail.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like this. So, and this kind of kept building up. And I remember I started to build a little momentum in my business. And at the time, this is 2019, I used to have a course-only business where it was only B2B sales courses. So, and this is probably, I left September 19, 2019. And by November, I figured out my strategy of generating leads and like making sales consistently, which was I would run a live webinar every 2 weeks, spend 2 weeks promoting it, get people onto the live webinar, teach something really useful, make it pitch at the end, collect a bunch of cash, and basically sell a course. And I was like consistently doing that. But then by the time it was like December, I was getting burnt out. So it felt like I was just running this treadmill of like, it's kind of like if you run a cohort model, it's always like a race to like get people filled up.
Dude, that was something we talked about in Mexico. I was getting burnt out with that same thing.
Right. So I felt exhausted by that, right? So I was really, and at this point, I've been running the business by December, like 4 months, and I was really second guessing myself. I'm like, man, like this is like exhausting. This is even what I want to do. Like, I'm making less money. Like, I'm working way harder than before. I have to do everything. Like, I'm not good at tech. I got to build all these funnels, these websites, these automation. I got to build all these things. I don't know how to do any of these things. And I was getting really, really stressed. And I remember I even had this job alert that would show up for VP of sales roles and CRO roles that get emailed to me from LinkedIn. Like, oh, here's his new jobs. So like every time I got one of those pings from LinkedIn, I'm like, should I check it out? Should I go for it?
Tempting.
Should I go begging for my job back?
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to from the ego part. I'm like, I can't go back. But there's an ego part, because like, oh, he's been really successful. He should be successful here. I feel like everyone's still watching me. So again, no one was saying these things. The pressure is more so like internal. And I think it's one of the things where I learned a long time ago, one of the number one drivers for most people is actually status. So like people want to maintain either the same level of status or go up. They never want to go down. It doesn't matter. It's not necessarily from a title perspective, but like if you're used to living a certain lifestyle, you never want to have to go backwards.
Yeah.
Like you always want to kind of hopefully maintain or at least go up. And I felt like because from a title, responsibility, all these things, I was going backwards.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt for probably every day for the first year. I thought about quitting every for the first year.
Damn.
It's pretty hard.
Yeah, that's very primal. Status is very primal. We often don't see it that way, but this urge within us to either look good in front of others, feel like we're going to be found out or whatnot. Yeah, it has very primal ties. Because you think about back in the day, if we get kicked out of the gang, we get kicked out of the tribe, that would mean exile or meant we were, left to fend for ourselves. And
that's it, man. 100%. So I always think about that. I'm like, man, that was like, that year one was probably the hardest for sure.
Yeah. I'm really interested to hear, because you are so, I remember seeing like a screenshot of your calendar and it was like everything was dialed in and locked in. And I know you really take care of yourself and the food you're eating and just everything you're consuming from, again, food, drink to media, social media, like it's all very intentional. Let's say most of it is very intentional. What does your personal practice look like? And when I refer to practice, it is like, what are you doing intentionally to cultivate the best state, the best Marcus every single day? Like what comes to mind for you when you think of that?
So I think the first piece is I have a very simple model I live by. I call it the M5.
Okay.
And the M5 are 5 core components of my life, which is basically it's an extrapolation of emotional, physical, spiritual, mental. It's kind of like that, but a little bit, it means a little more to me personally, right?
Yeah.
So the M5 is very simple. So it stands for mind. So every day I'm doing things to feed my mind properly, the right things. So I'm trying to eliminate the bad things, feed it the good things.
Yeah, I love it.
Second M is muscle. So that's your diet, that's your nutrition, that's physical working out, that's like physically blood tests, all the things that basically tie with your physical body. I call them M for muscle. Muscle makes it a little bit easier to kind of remember, right?
Yeah.
Then there is a mission. So doing things every day that aligns to my mission. That's really important. So again, high intention. Then there's next M is marriage. So this is not just your spouse, but the closest relationships. So I always imagine like whomever, maybe it's your roommate, maybe it's your best friend, whoever you spend the most amount of time with. Imagine if you're married to them.
Yeah.
Are you showing up to be the best version of yourself for them every single day? Okay. So you got to really challenge yourself there. Then the last M is money, right? So am I doing things that are IPAs, income producing activities, right? Like it's just one of the things where I've always obsessed about money, and it's a terrible thing to think about. But the reality is I know money solves a lot of problems. So that's important as part of what I do every single day.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's direct or indirect. So what that means is with this M5, every day I'm doing my best to show up every possible way to actually deliver on the M5. So that means my calendar is set up a certain way to ensure I'm fully there. So give like a really simple example. So typically I kind of walk in like a typical day. Today's a good example, right? So today, I woke up at 6, and the first thing I do is I drink a bunch of water, and I get about 2,000 steps in. That's it. No screens, no phones. Like if it was my phone, it's only because I'm listening to like a podcast or an audiobook, something like that. So I'm feeding my mind. Again, I'm feeding my mind, and I'm getting some movement in.
Yeah.
And just first thing.
Intentional what you're listening to, too. Not like mind-numbing stuff. It's cultivating. You never felt like you got to a certain point and you didn't have to do it again.
Well, it's like this. It's actually relatively easy to get a 6-pack. It's really hard to keep a 6-pack.
Yeah.
So just like anything else, the maintenance is always the hardest part.
Yeah.
So I think what's also key is like once you develop the identity of a certain person, when you don't do it, it becomes incongruent to you.
Big time.
So I've created that congruency in my own life where I know I'm going to listen to positive things. And I've actually tried to switch to some other things, and I just didn't get into it. So for example, like I know biography is actually very useful, but I'm not really into most biographies unless it's like a really good reader. I don't know what it is. I'm not trying to read a business book or a sales book or a book about wellness. And I don't know what it is, but it is what it is. That was a test, by the way, because I heard entrepreneurs listen to biographies, so I should try it too. Didn't work for me. So
man, it's such a good point. And going back to the questions you were talking about earlier, is that open-mindedness and curiosity. And there's so much stuff out there about how entrepreneurs should live, how successful people live. And to be honest, there is a lot of good stuff to it. But at the same time, it's not a blanket, statement or game plan for everybody. And I think the biggest thing, I have a 4-week rule. I'll try anything for 4 weeks, but I got to do it for 28 days.
That's it.
And so whether it's cold showers, it's mouth taping, it's high-fiving myself in the mirror. I got that from Mel Robbins. Like I am at a point where I'm like, I'm open to whatever. I don't care if it's weird work sometimes. And it's about seeing what specifically works for you, what you enjoy, what lights you up, the authors you like, the things that inspire you. But there's got to be some curiosity and there's got to be open-mindedness to it.
Don't knock until you try it. That's all I was saying. It's easy to hate until you try it. So like pretty much everything I do now, like at one point I made fun of, by the way. So
same.
So I'm waking up, I'm just walking around. Like if it's cold, I'm walking around in a circle around my house, get my steps in. It is what it is. I just want to get some blood flow in the morning, right? Then I'll pop my supplements I have. Then I go and actually I'll sit down and I'll write out all my goals. So I write all my goals out, just physically write it out. Depending on how much time I have, some days a little crazier. I actually have about a 9-minute video I made for myself where I've created what's called a life manifesto. Where
amazing.
I basically have written out what my dream life looks like. From the time I wake up to when I go to bed, I've written it out, and then I recorded myself reading it to myself. it talks about how I feel, how I show up, what my life looks like, what I'm doing, and then my value system, etc. And then I have like different pictures, like a vision board, insert in the video.
That's really cool. I love that video. It's amazing that you went right into that. I was gonna ask you if you have goals. I think I knew the answer, but if you write them, because I heard 3% of people write down goals.
Yeah.
And then, okay, you've written them down. Then what are you doing with them? Yeah. I think a big thing that I really work with my guys on too is like everything, because we'll set weekly targets as well. It's like they should be visible. They should be front and center. Put them on your phone background. Write them down every day. Visualize them. Creating. I have vision boards and stuff.
You have to do it. You have to like create yourself to do it. So like even that video, what I'll do if I don't know how much time I have. So sometimes if my day is kind of crazy, I'm like, you know what? Like on my walk, I'm gonna listen to it and pull it out and just look at my phone and watch my video. Right. Yeah. If I have more time, I'll sit and I'll play and I'll visualize it. Right. Yeah. And then I'll write my goals out after. So once I do that, I read a very small amount. So basically, like I'll read the daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. Sure. I'll just read the day's daily Stoic, right? You get some kind of thinking a little bit. Yeah. And then I go into deep work. So for example, like today, I actually had to create some YouTube content, right? So first couple hours, I basically was creating content. And I time block everything. It's all time blocked. So I use a physical timer. So it's like this. And then once that was done, I knew I had about a 30-minute block where I'm checking out some clients. So that was like my time to kind of check out some clients before I had a large coaching call at 9 o'clock. So then I ran the coaching call for an hour and a half. Once that was done, I went and actually had a call. It was supposed to happen right after with a buddy, but that got rescheduled to tomorrow. So that had an open block. So all I did was immediately, I moved my smoothie break to that block. Yeah. Had my smoothie really quick, right? Had my smoothie. And then I did some prep work, and then I had another meeting for this partnership I'm working out. So I did some prep work for a partnership. Then I ran the partnership call. That went great. That was right before this. Yeah. And then now we're doing this, right? And then, and by the way, if you take a step back, these meetings I'm having fill my bucket. So it makes me feel really good. I'm coaching people on one of the calls. I'm impacting other people. Yeah. Right. So I get a lot of energy out of that. Right. Then I had the partnership call where I'm building on a partnership that's going to help my business long-term wise. It won't have any immediate gain, but long-term wise, it's going to really serve me. Right. We're having our call right now. I'm enjoying my conversation. Hopefully you're enjoying our conversation. Yeah. And hopefully we can impact some more people by them listening to. So we're creating future content, which hopefully impact a lot of people, which again, that fills me up again. That goes with my mission. Right. Yeah. And then let's see, after this, I'm going to buy a bunch of ETFs and crypto. Okay. I got some financial stuff to kind of put into play. Right. So, it's just one of the M's. It's one of the M's. That's it. And I manually do it versus automatic. Because some people are like, well, you should just automate. Like, no. There's something about when you manually do it and you watch the money come out, it makes you much more in tune to what's coming in and out. Yeah. Right? So it's very intentional, right? And then once we get that done, I'm actually going to pick up my kid. So picking my kid from camp. He's going to go over to his grandma's for dinner and hang out with her and play with her for the afternoon. So I'm going to pick him up. Now I get a short amount of time with my kid, take him over there. And then when I come back, I'm actually going to do my plan tomorrow. So I plan tomorrow, but then I also check my email. Now I only check my email once a day. So my EA manages all my email, but then she has like things that she knows I like to read. So that's my time to actually check email that in that 30-minute max block. Gotcha. Right? So I'll check email then, and then I work out. I used to work out in the morning, by the way. Yeah. One of the things I shifted is an afternoon workout. That's been interesting, right? Yeah. Just kind of see how do I do. Yeah. Is that a recent shift? I've been doing it for probably about a month now. And I gotta say, I actually really like it. Yeah. Like, I've made the opposite shift recently. That's why I asked. Yeah. So I think whatever works for you, right? I think that's what's key. So the reason I made that shift was I also switched my workouts to switch it up. Yeah. And I got in this calisthenics program. And like it crushes me. It just destroys me. So before in the morning workout, like if I was doing a intermittent fast, that sounds like such a typical intermittent fast, a cold plunge. But anyways, I found those days that I was doing an intermittent fast. If I worked out really intensely in the morning, I was like destroyed energy wise. So I'm like, okay, I should probably do it like after I have a smoothie and some stuff in the later afternoon. Yeah. So that's been a little better for now until I get my body acclimated. I might go back. I do enjoy the morning workout. But anyways, I'll do that. And then I'll make dinner after that. And then my wife and I have a nice dinner together. and then we're going to go and pick up my kiddo around 8:30, get him ready for bed. And then when he goes down to bed, then I do my nighttime routine. And my nighttime routine is pretty chill. I basically I'll journal, answering those question prompts.
Yep. Handwritten, or do you do digitally?
Digital. My handwriting is so bad that I can't really read it. So I have to use a digital journal, because what I do is I have a whole week, end of the week routine as well. Yeah. Where every day I answer those questions, but at the end of the week, I'll go back. Well, I forgot to mention, one of the questions is what decisions did I make today, and why. I'm looking for different decisions I made and what I determined the impact to be. Yeah. And then at the end of the week, I review my whole week's calendar and I review my journal and take a look at what gave me energy this week, what took away my energy. And then I also write down what decisions did I make and what I expect what type of impact it's going to have. And then write down, if someone was to buy my business tomorrow, what's the number one thing they would change? So it gets me kind of thinking a little bit in terms of how can I improve the business. Yeah. Last question is also, what's my number one focus next week? So Friday, I'm prompting myself for the future. So you can kind of see that there's a whole cycle, how things kind of tie together or tie feedback loop. But that's kind of a typical day I have, where it allows me to hit all the buckets primarily, pretty consistently for the M5. Yeah. Which is how I really drive every single day.
Yeah, I love it. It's very intentionally living. And I think once you start to get clear on that and why you're waking up every day, what your mission is, what you're working towards, your targets, your objectives, and knowing that when you set those, it's okay if those change. Those don't have to be perfect out the gate. They actually probably should change, either expand or adjust a little bit as you gain more clarity. And then having a system for just simple reflection, maybe a little analysis. Hey, I jot these. Okay, let's reflect on it. What could I do better? And then looking ahead. How do I want to actually show up? You can set specific targets and goals, but also just allowing yourself to have that intention every day.
And I think what's really key is and I think sometimes when people hear this conversation and they hear wow, Marcus is doing a lot, Tim is doing a lot. But I think what's important to understand is I didn't start this way. Neither did you. Yeah. It started with a simple Post-it note, and that's where it all started. And over time, you start to learn and you borrow some of these principles from other people, and you try them out. Just try out, see how it fits. Yeah. And if you like it, keep doing it. If you don't like it, stop doing it. Right? Before, I used to have this crazy morning routine. It was an hour and a half long. Yeah. And over time, I've trimmed it down. It's relatively short now, but it fits me better now. So I think each person could go through seasons. I think someone who's listening to this is the key takeaway should be, hey, create ones that serve you. Yeah. Don't try to pick everything that you heard today. Pick one or two things that maybe you found to be useful. Try it on for 28 days. See how you feel, and see how it goes. So, for example, one of the things I did for my start of this year was I started doing a 24-hour fast a week. Okay. Why not? I just happened. It's just gonna be a water fast. Let me just see. And I realized after the first time I did it, it was purely mental. And actually, I really enjoyed it. Actually, it was kind of wow, I kind of accomplished something today. Even though, I accomplished something by not doing something. Yeah, amazing. And that's part of my routine now. So every week I do 24-hour fast. I said 90 days. I usually do a 90-day block, give myself 90 days, see how I do. Because I've heard some people say 30 days, some people say 90. I'm whatever. Let me just take the longer one. Yeah, I did 90. I love it. Actually, really liked it. Yeah. During that same journey, I also did 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups every single day, and practiced Duolingo 5 minutes a day as well for my Chinese. And that whole time, part of my 90-day challenge to myself. Yeah. And out of all those things, I only kept the fasting thing, which is the thing I at least expected to keep. Yeah, but you've tried it, and you have enough data to know. I think that's the biggest thing. And the last piece to add, and then we'll kind of work to wrap this up, is people really, they burn out because when they're doing action that isn't aligned to anything. Correct. And I think if you're trying to do a morning routine and you're listening to this and you're trying to be oh shit, I got to do everything Marcus is saying, and it's not aligned with what you want most in life, you're so crystal clear on your dream life. I mean, you have a video that you listen to that has it clearly outlined, right? And so of course you're going to be able to back into morning routines, planning out your day, because the North Star is so clear. And so I think one of the mistakes that I see is if you're trying to do a morning routine or trying to take on all these actions that you see other successful people doing,
and you're not doing it for the right reasons, you're not doing it because it's what you really want, that you're fired up about, that you love it, you enjoy it, and that it's actually helping you, then you're going to burn out. They're not going to work. You're going to resent it. You're going to be pissed off. And so, yeah, there are some of those things like cold showers, you can feel good, or cold exposure kind of coming out of it. So there's some like physical and mental boosters, I would call them. But still, over the long haul, it's not going to stick. So you got to find what sticks. So I know you got a tight calendar, and I just want to wrap with a couple fun questions. We got the Olympics going on right now. I'm curious for you, if you could gold medal in one Olympic sport, what would it be?
Oh, it would be 100-meter fly. Yeah.
Wow. Did you swim that growing up?
Well, I used to be a swimmer, so that makes it relatively easy, right? So, I grew up in the Michael Phelps era, right? So, that's why I'm like, it's easy. That was my jam. That was my stroke back then. So, it'd be cool to be able to do it now as one of the old guys that swim.
Yeah, hell yeah, that'd be amazing.
That would be cool. Yeah.
All right, last one is, you're a big reader. I'm a huge reader as well. Top book in the last 12 months for you?
Okay. It's actually a relatively recent book that was gifted to me by a good buddy. It's by Ben Sullivan and what?
Dan Hardy.
Dan Hardy. Is that the Dan Hardy?
Mm-hmm. They write books together, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it was. 10x is easier than 2x.
Yeah.
That's probably been, it was just a lot of good paradigm shifts across the world, right?
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that book for sure.
Great book. Also recommend that one. That was one I like breezed through also, and I was like, oh my gosh, so right. It immediately just shifts how you're thinking about your business, your problems, what you want. It's awesome. Marcus, dude, thank you so much for coming on and chatting. It was amazing. What are some ways that you can help people if they want to get in touch with you and start to create that dream life, man?
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. Absolute pleasure, Tim. So if you're a salesperson or you're running a sales team that's to double results, you can find me on LinkedIn by looking up Marcus Chen, or head to venleyconsulting.com. It was my absolute pleasure to be here.
Dude, we'll chat again soon. Thank you.
Talk soon.